Hello, everyone, and welcome to this UCL Connect event, everything you need to know about setting up your side hustle. My name is Lisa Yasamides, and I work in the alumni relations team at UCL. I'm very excited to be a part of this event and really looking forward to hearing from our guest speakers today. Next slide, please. For those of you who don't know about the UCL Connect series, this event is part of the series which looks at improving the professional development skills and expertise of alumni and students across the global UCL community. Whether you're establishing your career, moving into a new industry, or considering your options post-graduation, the UCL Connect series has something for everyone. The program is a mix of virtual and in-person events, which are run around once a month during term time. On the screen are examples of a few of the previous sessions we have run. If you do wish to rewatch any of these, please do follow the URL listed at the bottom. Before we begin with the event, I just want to let everyone know that this event is being recorded. There will be an opportunity to ask some questions to the panel. You can do this by writing your questions in the Q&A section, which you should see at the bottom of your screen. Please put your questions in here at any point during the session, and those questions which get upvoted will be answered first. For those of you who are not aware, there is also the option to bring up live captions on your screen. These need to be individually turned on. So if you would like to use this feature, you will see a button that has 3 dots and the word more at the bottom of your screen. If you click that button and then click the word captions, followed by the option that says show captions, this will enable that feature for you. Next slide, please. Up on the screen is what to expect from today's session. We will begin with some introductions, followed by the panel discussion, and we'll wrap up the event with an opportunity for the audience to ask questions. Next slide, please. So I am delighted to welcome today's speakers, Amberly Green, Verna Gao, Leo Garbutt, Aisha Small, and Robert Vilkellis. Thank you all for joining us today. It's great to have you back, albeit virtually, here at UCL. And a particular thank you to Amberly, who will be chairing the session. I will now hand over to you, Amberly, to begin the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome everyone. We are about to spend the next hour digging into the kind of very growing in popularity trend that is having a side hustle alongside building a career. So we're going to think about some of the kind of really individual reasons that people find themselves building a side hustle. All of us here are both building a career and have a business or a small brand that we've founded. So we'll have a think about that together and also spend some time thinking about some of the complexities and some of the ways in which that has happened for us. As Lisa said, we will have some time for questions at the end, so please do let us know throughout this session if there's anything that we can answer or help you with. Okay, so we are going to kick off straight away with a quick round of introductions. So I will start. My name is Amberly Green. I am a psychology and inclusive practices lecturer and do that full time, but I also run a small illustration studio called Line and Honey. Aisha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Aisha. I did mechanical engineering at UCL, and I am now a head of communications for a charity. I've done a few other things in between that, and my business is called Cute Fruit, and I help people to career pivot and build their careers like an entrepreneur, basically. And quite often they start profitable side hustles as well.
Thank you, Aisha. Robert.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert. I studied psychology and language sciences at UCL. And for my full-time job, I am an apprenticeship coach for a business called Multiverse. And for my side hustle, I am the program director of Coming Out Japan, which is a program that brings university students from USA, UK, and Canada to teach English in Japan. Very excited to be here with you all today.
Thank you, Robert. Verna, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. My name is Verna. I studied, what did I study? Oh, yeah, I studied construction related. So I did a master's in project and enterprise management, which is under construction related kind of civil engineering. I'm an anomaly, I think, because I don't have a full-time job anymore, because now my side hustle is my full-time job, which I'll go into in a bit, but I'm a food content creator. I'm also now an author, and yeah, I'm an influencer, if you want to call it. So
cool. Thank you, Verna. Leo. Oh, you're on mute.
Yep, I'm not muted. Hi everyone. Yeah, so I'm Leo. I I studied MSc Globalization and Latin American Development at UCL, graduating in 2015. My main job, which I work full-time at, is I'm an administration and events coordinator for something called the Research and Research Institute, which is based at UCL. And on the side, I'm a photographer, musician, multimedia producer, music producer, that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's me.
Nice, brilliant. Thank you, Leo. Okay, so we're going to dig in after that really quick round of intros, and you will get to hear from each of us in much more depth, as Vanna said, about the things that we've done, that we're doing now and that we've done to get here. But we want to start with a quick fire round, thinking back to what we wanted to be when we were younger, and then what we ended up studying at UCL. And you started to hear a bit already of what people have studied here. So we'll go through the quick rounds and then we will dig in. So Aisha, tell us what you wanted to be when you were younger and what you studied at UCL, how we kind of got there.
Do you know what? We had this question in team meeting today as well, and I was like, I actually don't know. Like, I'm sure it changed all the time, so I can't really remember. For a bit, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a firewoman. I wanted to do all sorts of things. But I think mostly I wanted to be free, to be honest. I wanted to be able to have options and do what I wanted, is actually what I wanted to do. And I ended up at UCL studying mechanical engineering. That's what I did for 4 or 5 years, if you include the year in industry, and that was that.
Nice. Yeah, I can completely relate to that because I also wanted to be 1,000 things. When I was younger, I'll slip in and answer this question. I wanted to be so many different things. I started by wanting to be a magazine editor. I don't know why. I don't know how that job even was part of my language at the time. I was like 10 and I was just making what I think now are zines, but at the time was just a mess. And then I found myself wanting to be an architect, and then realized how maths-based architecture is. So I was like, okay, it's not that, it's interior design that I want to be. And then again, pivoted again. And that, I think, is when I came across people and psychology and humans, and me being a people person and being quite chatty. I thought, okay, psychology is my thing. So I did that for undergrad, which meant that at UCL, I did a master's in clinical mental health sciences at the Division of Psychiatry. And that kind of started a 10, 15-year career in mental health that I'm still in. So kind of went very creative and then ended up finding that it was people that I wanted to work with. Leo, do you want to tell us what you wanted to be when you were younger?
I think I wanted to be a musician. I think I just wanted to be, sort of creating music, recording and so on, which I sort of kept doing, but I ended up doing politics and social policy at University of Leeds, and then doing the masters in globalization, Latin American development, which was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot of useful stuff in that. And I'm half Chilean, so the masters was always kind of quite interesting to sort of tap into that a bit more. But yeah, so the other thing I always wanted to be really was a kind of like a full-time photographer as well, but doing sort of like lots of travel and sort of, but mainly like photojournalism style stuff. One of my favorite photographers is Don McCullin. So yeah, but
yeah, it's a great contrast to have music and photography, but also have this kind of thinking around politics as well. That feels like a really cool level of duality there.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Verna, what about you?
So I actually wanted to be an actress. I think that's what I wanted to do when I was younger. So I wanted to be on TV for some reason. I'm quite like an extroverted person. I really like kind of I guess, and my parents would say that I really liked attention. So maybe that's part of my personality. But I felt like I was always like an entertainer. But my background is I'm Chinese. My parents were very much like, no, that's not a very viable route to go down for your job. So I ended up in engineering. So I studied civil engineering because I was good at maths and physics and stuff. My parents were engineers. And so I did that, but I was very creative. I was very good at art. I was very interested in design. I wanted to do theatre. But yeah, again, I put that aside. And actually, weirdly enough, after I did my engineering degrees and my management masters, etc., like I did do a couple of years in work in those industries. But I realized actually it really wasn't my jam. It just wasn't really interesting. I wasn't excited about it in the morning. And actually, like, I'll go on to a little bit later on about like how I ended up where I am. But it's kind of actually a very full circle for me, because I ended up kind of I guess meshing my interests and what I was good at together to kind of end up in the place that I am right now. Again, I'm not going to give too much away right now because we're going to get into it. But yeah, so that was what I wanted to do when I was younger, but completely irrelevant to what I'm doing now, but kind of in a way connected, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. And I think this kind of journey is quite common for a lot of people. Yeah, looking forward to hearing more about it. Robert, tell us what you wanted to be when you were younger.
I still remember being asked this question when I was younger, and I said, I want to be whatever I want to be when I grow up, because I really kind of kept my options open. But broadly, all kind of came down to scientist, which, of course, as we know, is just one job and not 50 billion of them. But I think my progression was always I wanted to understand more about the world. So when I was younger, it was science, and I kind of got into chemistry, because understanding the universe means understanding the building blocks of the world. But then I got really interested in people. So I got interested in psychology, because you need to understand the mind so we can understand the rest of the universe and reality. Not to make it sound too deep, but that was just like that was my progression as my things, like, okay, the physical world, the mental world, and then linguistics. I became very excited about language, because one thing that I've come to understand it as a coach is that the one thing we have control over is our language, and that's kind of how we interface with our thoughts, with the world. So if we change our thinking, we change our language, we can change our thinking, which has to change our language in turn. So I really wanted to be kind of in some sort of scientific discipline, which then ended up me being studying psychology and language sciences at UCL. But I think broadly what I discovered was just that, and I still kind of maintain this to this day, is it's not so much what do you want to do, it's who do you want to be, what kind of person do you want to be. And fundamentally, this idea of curiosity, of unpacking things, identifying the hidden lines between the puzzle pieces that are all there, but we don't often see. That's kind of what kind of drove me to go down the sort of empirical route, but then apply that really in a people-centric way into all the things that I do, academic or otherwise.
Yeah, that's brilliant. There's so many patterns that are coming through all of our answers that show that it wasn't a linear, straight, easy path to get to where we're at now. It shows that we've been influenced by so many things. So thank you for that, Robert. It feels like a really great time for us to dig a bit deeper into what our side hustles are and have a bit of a think about what were our motivations for building the businesses that we have now, and how does that align with the lifestyle that we live now. Each of us have kind of alluded to a bit of how our character and our personality, and whether we're an extrovert or not, and how that kind of connects into what we're doing. So I'd really love for each of us to dig into what is the side hustle, what is the business that we're running, what were our motivations for building it, and how does that align with who we are right now, our lifestyle. And Robert, I'd love if you could just continue on that vein and tell us.
Sure. I mean, thank you for bringing back to me, I guess. I think one thing I was actually saying this kind of in the briefing before this, so right now I am the program director of Connect Japan. That was not ever going to happen. I mean, that was 6 years ago. When I was studying at UCL, I said, oh, opportunity to teach English this summer. That seems cool. And I applied to it, and I got in, and that was cool. Oh, I like that. Let me do it again for another summer. Oh, I like that. Let me do it again for another summer. That'll be the last one, because I'm going to get a real job. And then just COVID happened, and it kind of threw the world of work upside down. Suddenly getting a job was not so easy. So I had a retail job that I basically kept for 2 years through COVID. And that allowed me to kind of manage a program online. And then when I started looking for a proper job, I discovered that work from home became more of an option. So kind of the progression that made that happen, like logistically, was just the fact that COVID was a tumultuous time for all of us, I think it's fair to say. But I think in some cases it did reinvent things that almost made things more flexible in terms of how does work? Do you need to go into an office? Do you need to be geographically limited? Maybe you don't. And this has allowed me to travel annually to Japan for basically the entire summer for the last few years, just to facilitate this program. But before that, though, and I think this is an important thing to share, and maybe this will also tie into a question later on, though, is that I like that as a program director for this thing, I'm in charge of lots of things around people and policy and training and design, but I don't have to handle things I don't want to handle, like payment or student recruitment that our partners handle. Whereas when I was at UCL, I actually founded a strategic communications business called Masters of Impact, which still exists, but it's pretty dormant because when you are doing a true side, well, it's not a true side hustle, right? But if you're doing a side hustle, it's a one-man band. You have to do a lot of things you don't necessarily want to do or need to do. So I think for me, also part of my process in doing this was discovering something I really, really cared about, was really excited about, jumping into that, figuring out ways to make it work that were by all means not in the cards, but then also recognizing that a side hustle is a matter of opportunity, not just a matter of, oh, I'm going to go and do this thing. Because when we start jumping into things, we discover things are complicated. And I wanted to do certain things, but not everything. And being a program director in this way really allowed me to focus on things I'm passionate about without having to worry about all the things that might take a lot of extra time, but not make me feel very rewarded for doing so.
Absolutely. That's really, really helpful, Robert. And thank you for that depth, because there is something I think about this COVID period of time that probably will come up for a lot of us in our other answers, that was a catalyst in many ways for people deciding what is the best way to use my time and energy and expertise, and how can I kind of leverage that to work for me. So thank you for that, Robert. Would anyone like to follow on? Yeah, Aisha.
Yeah, okay, so I'll try and keep this as brief as I can, but it's kind of hard to do because as we all have this kind of a bit of a winding road. Yeah, the question that you asked before about what do we want to do, I was like, um, the thing that's probably more interesting is what I did after university. That was the thing that was more interesting because it's been many things which have led me to this point now. So I read mechanical engineering, and a bit like Werner, engineering wasn't really for me. So I did it for a year. It was fine. Everything was cool, but then I didn't really want to do it anymore. And I ended up being a maths teacher. I had a choice between maths and science, and in the end, I did maths because I realized you had to do prep for if you were a science teacher, and that would just add more time to my planning. So I didn't want to do that. And then I was going to teach for a couple of years. I did this scheme called Teach First, which was kind of like new at the time, but now it's kind of quite widespread. And I ended up staying for a good while and got promoted, and I was like an assistant head teacher and stuff. And then I realized I didn't really want to be a head teacher, and I probably needed to leave teaching and do something else. Now, in between all that, where the side hustle bit comes in, is I got asked to do some consulting by an old boss of mine, and he asked me to go in and like help out another department. So I was like, okay, cool. And then he paid me, and I was like, okay, this is great. Wasn't expecting that. And that was the start of my kind of on-off consulting, and people started to ask me to do things. And then I started to write things on Twitter and a blog. I used to write about education. And then people used to start asking me to come and speak or do things. And again, they started to pay me. So it was just like, oh, okay, I'm kind of a consultant now. I do it on and off and that kind of thing. And that was the beginning of a side hustle. So the one thing I would say for people listening is your first side hustle might not be the one you end up doing. Like I've done so many things. So I did that, and that led to me getting into, well, that all came from photography because I started a photography project and I just wanted to do something with it. So I put it online. And then I started to talk about the pictures, and then that became a documentary photography project. So Leo, I also love Don McCollum. He's amazing. Um, and that helped my writing to get better. And then as my writing got better, every now and again on Twitter, I'd go kind of viral in the education community, and that asked the education editor of The Guardian to get me to write something for them. So then I started to write for national papers, and I got asked to appear on Radio 4. So all of this happened because I was sharing my work and doing these other random things. And then eventually I left teaching, and I'd been doing some bits and pieces in between. And the way I left it was I kind of talking to some people that I knew and who I'd met. I started to kind of go to these policy kind of focus groups, I guess. And I was kind of didn't know what to do. So I contacted a few people that I knew. I was like, what do you reckon I should do? Do you know anyone? Who should I be talking to? Da, da, da. And it so happened that one of them was like, oh, actually, there's this think tank that might be hiring. Da, 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 da. So then I got into policy very randomly. And then I got into strategy and some other things. Anyway, that's a very long way of me saying my friends started to notice that I got all these opportunities. And they were like, how have you done it? So a friend of mine was about to be made redundant. And she's like, look, Aisha, I know you've done a bit of coaching because somebody asked me to do some coaching for people. And I was like, yeah, but I don't love it. Like, but yeah, I've done some. And she goes, will you coach me? And I was like, I could, maybe. And then I really was trying to put her off, but she's like, I was like, oh, somebody else, you don't really want me to do it. Da, 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 da. And she said, no, but you've changed careers, you know, in really interesting ways. And each time you've managed to do something more interesting, and I want to know how you've done it. So I said to her, I'll do it. But actually, I should probably write down my process because I reflected that there's a process that I've done to do that without thinking. And I was like, if you let me try out the process on you, then I'll do it. And that was kind of the exchange. And she paid me, you know, the nominal fee, whatever. Um, and then I wrote this program basically, which was 16 weeks at the time, and took her through it. And she got herself a new role, and then she started. She'd always wanted to be a speaker coach, so she set up a speaker coaching business, and she did that for like a number of years and made it like really successful and stuff. And that was the beginning of what eventually is the side hustle I'm doing now. So that was, we just mentioned COVID. That was just before COVID, and she's like, "This is really good. You should do it with other people." And I shared it with some other friends of mine. And they were like, "Yeah, that's really good. You should do something with it." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe." Then COVID came, and I thought, I mean, people get made redundant. I should do something about it. But then, you know, my granddad's died, and I was like devastated, and all sorts of things happened. My job got changed, and all sorts. And I kind of just like, I don't know, sat in the corner and cried or something. And I don't know for a couple of years. And then I'd forgotten all about it. And I got an email from this person who I'd worked with a few years before. Her HR department in the new place she was working in, who were like, "Oh, you know, Leah recommended you, and we got some people we're making redundant. Do you fancy doing something with them?" And I was like, "Oh, that's that thing. I should dust it off, you know, and do something with it." And what happened was, in the end, the people already found something. But that made me think, okay, well, I worked with her maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and she recommended it. That means it's good, and I should probably do something with this. And then I mentioned it to another friend of mine. They were like, "Yeah, I want to do it." And I got my first couple of customers and clients, I should say. And I basically, in between that, I had a different job that I quit and I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I was wondering what I should do. And I thought, okay, I will offer the two things that I currently have that I quite like. I know people have paid me for. And one of them was a talk about social mobility to educational establishments. And the other one was this career pivot pro course, what I ended up calling it. And I was thought, let me try both of these and see what happens. And the talk was all right, like it did okay. But career pivot pro was the one people kept asking me about. And I was like, okay, this is the thing I should do. And that's basically it. So I'm now kind of developing it as we go. And I've got kind of a few clients I take on maybe like three or so at a time, and we do it as a cohort. And that's what I'm doing now. That's my side hustle basically. So my business is called Q Fruit, but I talk about Career Pivot Pro, and the concept is really it's taken me a very long time to work out how to describe it to people, but in essence, it's helping people to build their career like an entrepreneur. So be entrepreneurial in their approach to their career. And that can be whether they are starting their own side hustle or whether they're in an organization. But it's really about creating opportunities for yourself so that you're not at the whim of an employer. And so you have options. That's basically what it's for. So that's it.
That's absolutely brilliant. Actually, there's so much there. There's so many things that I imagine some of us might touch on later about how opportunity can really drive not only the side hustles you develop, but how opportunity can really drive your career. And hearing you speak about what you've built now feels like it connects really well to your answer in the first question, is that you said that really you just want to be free when you grew up. That's what you wanted. And having this business that is based on opportunity and based on building opportunity for others feels like it aligns really well. So thank you for that. Leo, tell us about your side hustle
Sure,
and
yeah.
motivations.
Yeah, so for the photography and the music that I do, a bit of sort of video production, I mean, it's all in terms of sort of motivation for it, I've always felt that it's sort of very core to me, to who I am, to be able to do these things. You know, since I was 11, 12 years old, I was recording and writing songs with my band, and it's always felt a huge part of my identity to do that. Likewise for photography and video stuff. But I suppose I think, I mean, the context for my work has changed quite a lot, and I think this might be quite useful for people listening, that you know, just to be aware that as your job situation changes, that, you know, the practicalities around your freelance work, your side hustle is also going to change too. So I've been in my full-time job since December, but before that I was freelance 100% of my time for about a year and a half, and then all my jobs before that, after leaving university, were all part-time roles, maximum number of hours about 32, minimum probably about, I don't know, maybe 21, 22, that sort of stuff. So there's been sort of these different stages of how much time I've had to do freelance work. Previously, actually, sorry, all the time for my freelance work, it's been project-based, mostly creative work, but there's also been sort of some project management, like for a summer school and so on, that happened a few years ago. And so the great thing about that is that you have teams surrounding a project, and it's I really enjoy collaboration. And again, it goes back to being in a band when I was a teenager. It's something, the sort of creative dynamics you can develop, I think are really great. But also being able to work by yourself to develop things. So that's been a big motivation for keeping all this going, really. But I think that so just in terms of my sort of the lifestyle at the moment, I've got a much less time now to do freelance work. So it means, I mean, there's a benefit in that I could be quite sort of selective about what I do, but and I get a lot of enjoyment out of it, because it really, it's like an opportunity to put in motion the stuff, the experience and the knowledge that I've got, and to do something new, but it does mean taking annual leave, and it does mean, working evenings, weekends, that sort of stuff. And I really, the first proper freelance work that I'm going to be doing since starting my current job will be the beginning of next month. I've been developing my portfolio in other ways, and doing some other freelance work or sort of, doing some live music photography on the weekends and so on. But yeah, so I think that as one's circumstances change, I think it's it's been important for me to realize that my approach to my work has also had to change, and not to feel guilty about that, because I know that as time progresses, things could change, or in my current job I might be doing more of what I love doing in my freelance work.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think, Leo, this idea of being adaptable and having to change your side hustle, your freelance work as you change in your career is really helpful. And I know that a bit later on, hopefully if we've got time, we'll tap a bit into what it was like for each of us to build our side hustle, or for anyone to share what it was like for them to build it whilst working full time. But Werner, I'd love to hear from you, because you mentioned right at the start that your side hustle is now your main hustle. So tell us more about, where you're at, and tell us more about it.
Yeah, sure. So in a nutshell, as I mentioned, I was studying engineering when I was at uni, and it was never really something that I was super excited about. I was very good at it, but I think it just didn't really I think being good at it and doing it continuously every day is very different. So I think I always had the creative streak in me that I really wanted to continue. And actually, going on from everybody else's point about kind of pivoting and adapting to things that happen around you, I think the reason why I kickstarted it was also because I was working in my corporate job, and I really wanted to make some more money on the side. And I was like, let me go and get a side, like a part-time job. And that happened to be, I don't know if anyone knows Dumpling Shack, which is this like dumpling store that's in East London, quite a popular dumpling stall. And they basically were advertising at the time for a dumpling wrapper. And I was like, I'm Chinese, I know how to make dumplings. So I just hit them up, and then I told them, they were like, oh, why didn't you come down for a shift? So I went down one Saturday, and they hired me there and then. They were like, you're really good at it, you can like do this job. So that's how I started the whole food business thing. Not that I started it, but I was interested in how they ran it. It was very interesting to see kind of people doing that on the side. Actually, it was almost inspirational, because a lot of these people, Black Bear Burger is another example. You guys might have seen it like Croydon, whatever. They're really big now, but at the time there were also people who just had day jobs like banking, whatever, and they wanted to do something on the side they were really passionate about. And I felt quite connected to that, so I kept going back every week, and I was meeting these vendors in the market, and it was just quite fascinating. And that's actually where I met one of my friends, who then ended up putting me onto her food blog, that she was kind of going around visiting restaurants and stuff. So I just ended up networking, meeting all these people. And so long story short, like pandemic happened, and at the time I was taking photos. And because of the pandemic, obviously there was no restaurants to go and visit. So I ended up just cooking. And I was just cooking for my own interest, because people were watching Netflix, etc. I was like, I'm going to make food. So I ended up making 3 meals a day, and I documented almost pretty much everything on my Instagram. And it really wasn't for growing, to be an influencer or anything like that. It was literally just for a distraction. And because I kept doing it, and I guess it caught a lot of people's eye. I guess at that point in time, everyone was looking for like, you know, recipe inspirations, cooking tips, etc. And that's kind of where it kicked off. And I just kept doing what I really found like enjoyable, you know, making noodles, dumplings. I was documenting like step by step, and this is before video content was a big thing. And I guess like at the time in the UK there wasn't that many Asian food creators, and it kind of like, you know, grew from that point of view. And long story short, I just kept doing it because it's not as complicated as everyone else's story. I was doing a full-time job at the time, but I was working in the tech company, and they were very okay with kind of having a side hustle, which I know we'll go talk about later on. But I guess like my colleagues found it really fascinating that I just kept doing this food blog thing now that I was cooking and stuff. And I never found it embarrassing, because I think a lot of people find putting themselves on the internet quite embarrassing or a little bit cringe. I was just like, nah, it's fine, like it doesn't really matter. And yeah, like it just kind of happened. And yeah, I started making more money from the content stuff that I was doing. I was collaborating with brands, etc. And this is, I guess, where opportunity and luck comes in, because I think luck means nothing if you're not prepared for it. Because for me, I think I was quite prepared for the opportunities that came my way, because I wanted to get into it more. It was really fascinating. And then, you know, someone reached out to me for a book. So I was like, okay, yeah, let me like diversify my portfolio. I'll go offline. I'll do some book. It's right there, actually. Product placement. But yeah, so I think all of this was just like a very interesting journey of learning what I was really good at, kind of making sure that I was still learning along the way, and then keeping up with like, you know, the trends, learning new skills. And essentially that became more interesting than keeping a full-time job. So then now, which is why now is my full-time job.
Amazing. I love that. This conversation is completely flying. The time is flying, and there are so many things that each person is saying that I'm like, oh, tell me more. And I did notice that your book is right above your shoulder. So I love that you've placed it there. But one of the things that you mentioned that actually connects to how you kind of started us off, Aisha, is around opportunity and being prepared for it. So keeping your eyes open and having this curiosity. And my approach has been really similar. So just to answer the question before we move on, yeah, my side hustle kind of grew in a really organic way. So I really resonated, Robert and Aisha, with some of the things that you shared, because I have always worked in mental health teams and always worked in psychology and mental health. And UCL has a really soft spot in my heart, because I started my illustration studio here whilst I was doing my dissertation at UCL. And as you know, my master's was in psychiatry, and it was brilliant, but it was testing. It was like spreadsheets. I was looking at 1,000 MRI scans of brains that were experiencing hallucinations, and I had a brilliant time doing it, but also really missed my kind of childhood connection to drawing and painting and all of that stuff. So I started drawing again, and I haven't got an art education. All of my kind of degrees are in psychiatry and psychology and academic practice. And so I found myself just trying it out and drawing, and not at all having a business plan, because who has a business plan, but just doing and sharing. And again, being able to put yourself in front of family and friends and putting yourself online meant that this kind of live feedback and the naivety that comes with starting a brand without any plan meant that a brand would approach and say, could you do this illustration for me, or could you create this project for me? Which I was like, okay, let's do this, and kind of creating a strand of my business around that. And then coming across an event or a fair or a market and thinking, actually, I've got pieces that could go really well there. And it's been easier, I'd say, for me to develop a side hustle alongside quite a demanding career in mental health, because my illustration practice is also rooted in representation. So what I draw and what I talk about, and now what has become my research practice, is all about women of colour and rest and well-being and narratives around well-being, and how we can access rest and how we can access care. So talking about that at work, in assessments, one-to-one, with people that want support from a mental health team, and then going home and thinking about how that relates to me and what I can put on paper to depict that for myself, kind of grew at the same time. And I think this idea of having intention for what you want to do and what you want to achieve, but having the opportunity for opportunity to come your way, is kind of how the brand kind of started. And I'm now at a place where things like commissions and projects for other people. I just recently illustrated a book called Radical Self-Care, which I'm really happy about, because it's beautiful, for an author who is a practitioner. All of these projects are just coming because they connect to what I'm doing full time. So there's this kind of duality and connection that I'm really enjoying. And I'm also really loving some of your connections to this idea of I did this, and then it led to me thinking, I wonder how it connects to this. So I'm wondering whether for our next question we can go practical, because a lot of us have spoken about our motivation, our lifestyle, and somewhat our upbringing. So I'm wondering whether anyone wants to tell us, are there any practical skills, routines, practices, or processes that you've had to develop in order for it to work, where you're building a career, going to work, and building your side hustle? And Leo, I see you want to get in. So we'll do Leo and Aisha, and then probably move on to our last question. Leo.
Also connects, I think, to a couple of questions that are coming from Maria in the Q&A box. But certainly, like, having a routine is very important. I mean, it's easier said than done for sure, but I think that it can be really, really effective. So when I was working sort of 4 days a week, sort of 4 days over 5 days, so it meant I could come home for about 4:30, and then this is when I was recording my an EP that I released back in 2018, and so basically I'd come back and I wouldn't let myself sort of relax. Basically, I'd just come in and say, okay, I'm gonna make a cup of tea and I'm just gonna go to my home studio and I'm gonna record and I'm gonna get into it, because if I sort of stopped and tried to sort of wind down a bit before I did it, then I just find that the evening would be gone. So, the idea was basically just like race home on the tube and then just sit down and go and do, at least a couple of hours. I mean, things that didn't really feel like a chore at all, because I absolutely love doing it. So it's quite easy for 2 hours to then turn into sort of the whole evening. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that one has to balance in life, but that is, I think, a really important thing. And then on the weekends, it's a sort of similar thing. You have to make a judgment about how far along you need to be to do your work. And so, just looking at Maria's question about producing sort of handmade items, I guess, you might have an idea of how many that you need to produce, or how many you'd like to produce, and trying to get up to that sort of target. Yeah, I mean, that's probably what I'd say to that.
Brilliant. Love that. And Maria, thank you for that question. I haven't kept my eye on the chat at all, and I know that Lisa will share later, but most of, half of my business is also handmade as well. So I have a commerce side and then I have the commission side. And there is something so wonderful, but also so, I don't know what the word is, but I guess you'll guess my word from my tone, about having to make things physically with your hands, and just the fact that there is so much time that you have to dedicate towards that. So I'll let Aisha answer, and then hopefully as we wrap up this question, I can share a bit more about this idea of having a practical business that requires you to make and to sit. So thank you for that. Aisha, what are you thinking? Oh,
can I
get me
really quick, I forgot to just answer on that as part of just that answer, that
yeah.
I shouldn't say this, but I really don't like social media, and it does take time. So those times when you're meant to be, going back home and working on your project, doing social media may take up that time, but maybe it's something that can be done whilst you're on the tube, having photos or something that you upload or whatever. That's all I had to say. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm excited to hear what Bernard says about that, because obviously she loves social media, right? But so this is an interesting one. There's a few answers I have, and one of them is, so my background is I have a family, and obviously I've got my day job and stuff like that, so I have to be quite efficient with my time. But like Leo said, when you do something, you're enjoying it and get really into it, and you have to think about stuff. But this is not a hobby; it's a business, and it's something that you're trying to monetize or already are. So that's a very different shift. It's kind of, when I was doing photography, I was doing that for fun because I wanted to do that. I wasn't expecting to earn money from it. It was different. But then when I started writing, people started to pay me, and it became a different thing. And business is very different to, what I outlined before with people coming to me. That sounds good. It is and it isn't, because you also need to eventually learn to market and be sustainable, and not just do projects that kind of pay you money and then get paid for ages and then pay you money. That's not a sustainable way to live. So the quick answer is systems and routines, which is sometimes hard for me because I like to be a bit more spontaneous, but you have to do that or else I wouldn't get it done. And also a bit of what Leo said. So there are two sides. There's the delivery of your business. So whatever that is, it might be your making, or, for me, it's maybe when I'm coaching clients, or I love writing the course content, all that kind of stuff, creating resources for them. I love that stuff. that's the creative side. I love it very much. But then there's also, how do people know that you have a business? So initially you start off talking to your friends and family or former colleagues or whatever it is, but ultimately you have to let the world know about it. And I would say, particularly, you know, the age I'm guessing most of the people in the call are going to be, social media is invaluable, and you'd be ridiculous if you weren't using it. You can have clients worldwide by doing that, and it's an amazing thing. So my advice to people is choose. There's two different ways to do it. I mostly use LinkedIn as my marketing. I use LinkedIn and a newsletter. Now, I use LinkedIn because I came off all social media a little while ago just because it was getting on my nerves. But LinkedIn is a professional platform and people are there looking for jobs. So one way is to be where the kind of people you think are your clients or customers are. And the other way is to do the medium that you love, that you know you're going to do the most. So if you're into photography and stuff, sure, use Instagram. I'm a writer, that's my base skill. So for me, that would be LinkedIn or Twitter, X, sorry, that would make the most sense. And they're the ones you have to do something that is very sustainable for you. Unless you really love video and YouTube, you know, Verna can talk to this, but video production is extremely intensive. It's crazy intensive, and people have no idea what goes into it, especially at the beginning when you're probably not going to be farming it out to people. So the easiest is to write. The second thing is to take pictures, but then you still need to be able to sell that. So that's what I would say with that. And you have to see it more. It's just not just the way you interact with your friends and family. It's a job. It's your marketing. It's your advertising. So for me, the one way I make that sustainable for me is I do it all on my phone. I run my business from my phone pretty much, apart from the delivery aspects of things because it's not a good experience for my clients. But the reason is because otherwise I would never do it. Like I was wondering why I could never do my newsletter, but I did LinkedIn every day. And that was because I wrote my LinkedIn post on my phone. I leave it on iPhone notes and I upload it. And I realized, oh, if it's on my phone, I will do it. Pretty much my screen time is crazy, but it's nearly all business stuff. On my invoices I do around my phone, you just have to remove all the barriers to entry. And if that means like when I wrote a book, I did it in my lunch break during work, and I set myself half an hour and a timer, and it meant I wrote 500 words every day. And eventually I had a book. So you have to just make do with the time you have and stick to it. So if you're an early morning person, if you're a person who's got family or kids or commitments or a job, whatever, do it first thing in the morning because no one's going to derail you. It's very similar to the advice that people give when they're not getting fit. Like just whatever it is that will help you to do it every day, do that thing and don't worry about it being perfect. When you get into it and you see rewards, you know, like yesterday is Sunday, we had a family event. I needed to go to it. I wanted to go and enjoy my family time. I was up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I did 3 hours work because there's things I needed to do for my clients. I had that out the way so I could relax with my family. When we got home at 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock, I was doing more work. And then that was that. So, because I know I've got things this week that I have to do, so I won't do them otherwise. And now I can enjoy the rest of my week. That was the sacrifice I had to make. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think you're speaking a lot about accessibility and how to make your business as accessible as possible for you, especially when thinking about the routines and things that are unmovable. So thank you for that, Aisha. I have 1,000 questions and we don't have time for any of them. So I'm going to try to put 2 questions into one. Robert, I'm coming to you first as a bit of a spoiler alert. And the last thing that I'd love to know from each of us in as short a time as possible is, are there or were there any surprising lessons learned or surprising experiences you had in your business, in the building of your business, that I guess if you were to start again from scratch, you'd really benefit from knowing? So Robert, I'd love if you could start us off with that.
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? I'm sure that we could make
You've
an
only
entire
got 10
hour
seconds.
just on that question. I mean, I think what I'd actually kind of turn that on its head somewhat and say that there will be things that will surprise you, things that you will not expect. And the main thing is not so much feel like you have to know things from the beginning that you will figure out later. It's be prepared to make mistakes and be prepared to not blame yourself for them. I mean, like a brief example, last year, for the first time in several years since COVID, we brought our program back to Japan. So it was online for a few years. And that necessitates bringing 150 people to Japan. Me and my team had to write up a lot of documentation. And it turns out a lot of documentation was, like 70% of what we needed, but the remaining 30% was really missing. This year, I spent probably around 50 hours adding another 8,000 words to a 10,000 word program agreement. So a lot of it's looking at things saying like, okay, I'm going to give this my best shot based on my understanding right now. And then I'm going to review and see, okay, what went wrong, what was good, what didn't work, and then take a step back and say, okay, from a process perspective, how do I refine this? So for me, it's like there's some things I think if I'd done this a year ago, I would have implemented them, but I didn't. So for me, it's always about an ongoing process of recognizing that you are, I guess, like be principled, know what is important to you, know what you want to create that, and ultimately there'll always be more you could have done. And some of it you will know you could have done, and you'll say next time I'll give myself more time or give myself more of a team behind me to do that. And sometimes it'll be, well, I actually had no clue. But now that I do have a clue, how am I going to make sure that I'm honoring my job? How do I make sure I'm honoring my passion and I'm honoring the people that are I connect with through this thing? What am I going to change? How am I going to change gear? So it's more like a philosophy. It's not so much what would I do differently. It's more like what philosophy would I say to anybody to adopt to make sure that you are not punishing yourself for not knowing everything, because that's a common trap. We want the best for ourselves and what we do. You're not going to help yourself do that by being upset that you're not constantly delivering at things that you would not know about.
Totally. Thank you so much for that, Robert. And I would answer really similarly that there's something about mindset that whilst in some ways it's surprising, in some ways it wasn't surprising at all, is that I started my side hustle really thinking that my business and my job were two very distinct, separate things. I would go to work and work in this team and assess people all day and support them with their mental health. And I had so much joy in doing that. And it's only recently that I've decided to lecture full time, actually. Up until now, I've been working in kind of mental health and clinical teams. But I would go to work and work there all day, and it was intense and it was full on. And then I'd come home and put on my creative hat and then start creating and start looking at suppliers for printing and working out how I would run my business. And I think one of the biggest things that surprised me, as I said, but then became kind of really obvious, was my mindset seeing these as two separate things was doubling my work. And I think when I realized that both sides of me, both my kind of job that pays my mortgage and my side hustle that gives me joy, which connects to a question that's in the chat, once I realized that both of those were two sides of the same coin and I was the common denominator, actually my to-do lists and the way that I structure my time and the way that I was able to apply my energy to both my job and my side hustle just became a bit more seamless once I realized that everything that I'm doing are connected and that the duality in me allows me to do each thing in a way that feels seamless. And I had really distinct practical things that changed for me. I used to have a notebook for my illustration studio and a notebook for work. And I used to have a Trello board, a project management tool for work, and one for my side hustle. And actually now I have one notebook. I actually created my own. This is a shameless plug like Werner. I created my own duality journal that I released. And that journal, that notebook connects everything, all my thoughts, all my ideas, all the things I need to do across all aspects of my life are in one place. And it's really allowed me to remove the waste of time that comes from trying to change mindset and change energy and change track, and actually kind of looking for the common denominators in everything has really supported my progression, I think, in all ways, both in my business and at work. So I'm really appreciating this idea of mindset and how much more helpful that can be. Is there anyone? Yes, Leo. Is there anyone I wanted to finish us off and finally answer this before I go to the Q&A?
I just wanted to respond on that sort of mindset question, really, because it ties into this idea of sort of distinguishing between, if you take all your activities that you're doing, as a whole, and basically you can sort of determine what your sort of core interests are and really what you're passionate about and want to take into the long term. So there's this really good video, someone called Elizabeth Gilbert. If you type in hobbies, jobs, careers, vocation into Google, you'll probably find it. It's by a thing called Acumen Academy. So I saw this video about 5-6 years ago. And basically what she does is basically distinguish between hobbies, jobs, careers, and vocation. Hobbies being low stakes, stuff that you just enjoy doing, like it might be gardening or something like that, that is not something that you want to turn into a business necessarily, or something that is sort of intrinsic necessarily to who you are. And there's jobs, which is what you do to earn money, and there's careers, which is what your job can turn into, because it's like a pattern of the kind of work that you do. And then there's your vocation, which is, in my case, it's vocations perhaps. For photography, music, that sort of stuff. It's, you know, very intrinsic, and it's the stuff that you ideally want to turn into a career. And so through this process of sort of dissecting, and I actually did this, I sat down and I just sort of jotted down things I like doing or things I am doing. And it was really useful to sort of split things up in that way. And I think that can help people get into the right sort of frame of mind about what it is that they want to pursue, especially on this question of what's a hobby and what's a vocation. You know, what can I be happy leaving as something that's small, low stakes, something that, you know, doesn't matter, or what's the stuff that's really important.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for that. Okay, I'm starting to feel the time pressure because there's amazing questions in the Q&A and we've got about 10 seconds to get through them all. So I'd really love for anyone on the panel to answer this question by an anonymous attendee who wanted to know if there were any specific challenges between switching between a side hustle and a full-time job. What were the challenges between the two? And there's also a second part of that question that I'd be particularly interested if anyone can start us off in regards to funding. So is there anyone out of us on the panel here who can comment a little on series funding, accessing funding? Robert, potentially you could share anything about, I don't know if that's presumptuous or not.
I mean, I appreciate that that's what you see in me. But I will say that just I have not had to pursue series funding for Japan. But what I would say is that it is good to understand what is available in your, what's available out in the world in terms of funding. So for example, many institutions offer different grants. So for example, if you're actively at UCL, the hatchery is UCL hatchery is fantastic for a lot of support. I did some work with them when I was at UCL, they're really good. But also UK government grants exist. And in Japan, we've actively been looking at, for example, different municipal governments are trying to provide things to facilitate language acquisition with students. So there's lots of things there. And Aisha, I see that you've got something to add as well.
Yeah, I can speak to series funding, not for my day job because I bootstrap, but I can speak to it not in my business, but in my day job, I've been involved in kind of judging panels for funding and that kind of thing. So I can talk about it. The main thing I would say is, first of all, it's extremely competitive. So whatever it is, you have to be amazing. And even then you might not get it. So I would not put my hopes on getting funding, consider it a bonus. And the other thing is, I can say this as someone who's judged a few different things for entrepreneurs, especially like young entrepreneurs. The most attractive ones are the ones who don't need the funding, in that they are going to do it anyway. They're going to find a way to make it work. And then you're like, I want to be part of that. This organization wants to be part of it. So if you're like, I will do it if I get funding, you're almost certainly not going to get funding, which is a bit weird, but it's kind of how it works. And then just what Robert said is, there are various things. The best thing to do in terms of funding is to really research and make sure that the funder matches what it is that you're doing, and really don't just go for everybody. Go for the ones that are specialists in your area, because you also want the advice and support they provide afterwards, which will help to accelerate your organization. I can't stress that enough. It's an ongoing partnership. That's just a quick thing that I would say about funds.
Nice, thank you, brilliant. There's another question here in the chat that I would love to hear from Werner and Leo about, and I'll also speak to, which is still tapping into social media. Maria, thank you for this question. So it's, would you say that social media is essential? I am going to jump in and say yes, and I also really struggle with it. You can see already from my face that there's a torn relationship with it. Social media, or Instagram specifically as the first platform, was the beginning. It was the kind of jump, the commitment that I made when I decided I wanted to start a brand. It was making it on social media that kind of gave me this is the first real life action that I'm making towards running a creative business. And I will say that I think that Instagram particularly, I'll say, but then kind of continuing on to newsletters and Substack and some of the other things that I'm really enjoying right now, has been a godsend for me because of community and being able to connect with really wonderful people that are not only aligned with the values of Land and Honey, which center around this idea of who can access rest and what does rest and joy look like for us, and how can we kind of really connect over visuals. So being able to meet and connect with community online has been absolutely beautiful. And the only downside is that you have to make things to go on social media. And that for me feels like the biggest downside and the time drain that comes from having to make and idea generate and find yourself in this kind of creative director role. But I will never, I would always suggest that people do as much as they can as soon as possible to work out what authenticity looks like for you online, because it can be a joy if you leverage it to connect with other people who just appreciate you existing and being there. And when, again, speaking from my own positionality, when representation is as important as it is for so many of us, just kind of showing your face and being able to share where you're at and what you're doing and what you're working on, I think already is part of the work. So I would have to say it's a mixed answer, because sometimes I hate social media, but I've really enjoyed how much I've been able to leverage it to just meet others and to be connected. Werner, what would you say about it, our resident expert?
So I'm going to say something quite different here, because I think the way I see social media is it's a free marketing platform. And as a starting business, and I know a lot of the questions are about how much money do we make? I saw one of the questions like, how much money do you generate, the funding? I honestly think a lot of the times people don't have a side hustle is because they get so wound up in the more complicated questions before even starting. So I think taking the first step is actually the more difficult part. Like worrying about funding, worrying about social media, worrying about gaining followers, how much money you're going to make, that shouldn't be the focus, because I assure you, you'll probably trip up on that and you'll never start. Because I think the reason why I got really far, and this is my personal experience, is because I never cared about the end goal. Like I didn't have, and I think some of us talked about not having a business plan. I think sometimes having too much, overthinking it, is actually the reason why a lot of people don't have a side hustle, because it seems too daunting to kind of just take that first step. It's kind of like getting yourself to the gym. Like going there is probably harder than the whole thing that you're actually going to do at the gym. So the reason I say that social media shouldn't be regarded as like a pain is because at the end of the day, it's free. And if it finds you the audience that you're going to get, it's fine. And the reason why it worked for me is because it was just a portfolio where people kept coming onto, and they can see whatever they're looking for. They don't need to reach out to me. They can see exactly the quality of the work I'm doing. Doesn't matter who's seeing it. If I know that the quality of the work that I'm putting out is exactly how I feel passionate and devoted to, I'm going to trust that someone out there at the right time is going to see it. And I know that a lot of people spend a lot of time on social media strategy. I think sometimes that gets too complicated and it puts you off. So I think I think Aisha talked about starting YouTube or, video content. A lot of my friends ask me like, why do you not do YouTube? If I started on YouTube, I would have given up so early on, because it takes so much time to generate a 2-minute video and only for it to maybe get 200 views. And that's going to put you off so quickly that you'll never ever do it again. And because I started on a short form platform, it was so much easier. It was really easy to improve my skills. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is when it comes to social media, it's just a form of practicing, getting yourself out there and getting comfortable to the idea that people, again, are going to give you negative feedback. But at the end of the day, all feedback is good, in my opinion, because not knowing is the worst part. Not knowing how well you're doing. I think that is a lot of the time like the blocker as to why people don't, because it's that fear of like, oh, what if I don't do this? What if I don't, what if I don't get right? And in my personal opinion, honestly, like the reason why a lot of young generation people can make it is because they just kind of do it, because they don't think about too much. Like they're not too wound up in that consequence kind of mindset, but they're more so just trying to get it done. And yeah, I'm going to stop talking, then we're running out of time.
So helpful and so practical as well. And sometimes it's really important to balance both angles of that. So thank you, Werner.
Thank you.
Okay. So there's a few questions in the chat that some people on the panel have indicated that they want to answer. And there is a last question that I'm wondering that if we could finish off with, and it's talking about competition and this idea of, we know we're in an oversaturated market. We know that there's a growing trend, as we said, of developing side hustles. So has anyone, just as a last question, had any thoughts or had any thoughts or thinking around what it means to battle competition and develop your niche? Any thoughts that you can share with us about that, with so many people online doing so many things?
Sorry, can I just quickly add, just because on the social media stuff, again, this goes back to my point of like not worrying about anything else. And I know that there's competition. I think sometimes having tunnel vision in yourself is really good, because I think like believing in yourself is more important than comparing, because comparison is the end of anything. So in my head, like competition is good, you can learn from it, but if it affects your mentality towards how you are as a person or your product or what you're offering, I think that should be ignored for the time being. As long as like you believe in yourself, competition is always going to be there. It's never going to be eliminated. I think knowing and honing in on what you're good at is more important than focusing on that. At least in the beginning, because once you're getting to a stage that where you can improve, then that's when you need to learn from your competition. But in the very beginning, your competition is yourself.
100%. I just want to say exactly what Verna said, which is, we both said that we weren't that into engineering and we chucked it in the bin basically. But for me, what stayed with me is the kind of approach of you try something and you iterate, and then if it works, you do some more or you swift around. That has been the number one thing. People are definitely overthinking it. It's kind of jump on the social media that you like and that you use anyway. Use that. So all the things I talk about with LinkedIn, I did it with X before. It's no big deal. It's kind of, I like to write, so I chose a writing-based platform that I don't have to think too much about. The actual beginning of this version of my business was because I was taking a sabbatical and I knew I loved to write and I wasn't writing publicly. And I don't know, I thought, I'll do it on LinkedIn. No one really looks at LinkedIn anyway. They're just trying to get jobs. No one cares. And I just thought, I want to write every day. And I gave myself a 30-day writing challenge. That's literally it. There was no, it's going to become this, it's going to become that.
Yeah.
And then over time, I used it as a way to work out what I thought. And then my philosophy, in a way, developed and I tested ideas. So if you make social media less scary and just see it as a idea testing thing, or, and then it's like validating your product, or you're letting people know what's going on, you're documenting it, it completely changes it, what it is that you're doing. So people just need to get started. Like they're definitely overthinking it. Like somebody else about a business plan. I, to this day, still don't have a business plan. And I've definitely made money online and I've been making money from my consultancy. So that's not the thing. The thing you need to do is to have a product of some description, even if you're service-based like me. You have to have a product that you can talk about that makes sense. You have to tell people about it. Like everyone's got stuff in their heads and they don't tell people about it or they don't show it. So tell people or tell people on social media, like whatever it is. And then you need to like make offers. That's it. And then you have, the beginnings of a freelance business or a business or a side hustle. But if you don't do those things, accountant, all that fancy stuff, you won't ever need to use it.
I would. I'm present to time, but I do want to add something here that I think is also important because so one thing that I did with Masters of Impact, which is the public speaking business that I created at UCL, I helped coach startups, founders, delivering pitches. I think an important thing as well is that on one hand, definitely, comparison can be, it's like, do not get stuck by comparison by saying like, oh, I'm only here and that person I really like's over there. But it's also important to be aware of how are you being evaluated by others? What criteria you're being evaluated. Like, for example, Aisha, you're talking about like getting funding and like the founders that are almost more successful in getting funding are those that don't seem to need it. Like you'll do it anyway. Because one of the big risks that if I'm saying I have money, I want to give people money, I want to understand you're saying I really need the money. Whether you need the money or not, it's not my issue as a funder. What I'm thinking is like, will the money go somewhere? And everything like, oh, you're ticking these boxes that you'll use this is important. And I think just this is something you can use everywhere, by the way. Like I think like it's, to me, simple example is this. I used to go to so many job interviews, used to fail. I'm thinking, what the hell happened? Like I read the job description, I had a good time, they seemed to like me, seemed to like them. What went wrong? Well, what happened was that they're there with a tick box in their head saying, I need Robert to give me A, B, C, and D. I go in and say, hey, A, B, C, E, F, G, even with an H. They're not saying what an amazing guy, he gave all this stuff. They're saying, yeah, he didn't give criterion D, so he's off. Same thing goes that oftentimes if you are succeeding less than you might think, like you think you're doing things well, you're putting yourself out there, where are you missing the mark? It's not necessarily that you're doing a bad job or that you are not cut out for something. It's just we need to be able to have this great confidence and strength in ourselves. We also need to be sensitive to the fact that we are in a system. We are surrounded by people. People are engaging with us. People choose to engage with us. And those things are all hugely, hugely, hugely important.
Yeah. So one thing about social media is we get it wrong. It's a great place to listen. So to what Robert was saying, you will have a successful side hustle if you offer value. So we all need to listen to what our market wants. And social media is fantastic for that. So if you flip it, it becomes a very different thing.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. Honestly, I definitely feel like we could have gone for another half hour. I really appreciate all of the comprehensive insights. So thank you all. Everyone in the audience who are still with us, thank you for joining us. Please do go to, I love that Leo has added his Instagram to his background. I wish I had the tech skills. I wish I had the skills to make that happen, but I don't. So please do go back to the UCL sign up page to get contact details for all of us. We'd really love to see you all on Instagram and LinkedIn and all the places that you can find us. So thank you for joining, and thank you for being here, and thank you for your wonderful questions. And panelists, thank you for a really wonderful, really organic conversation. Really lovely to meet you all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm just going to really quickly just say, throw in a last minute slide at the end there. So I just wanted to say, again, thank you to everyone. That was amazing. I agree, Amberly, 100% that we could have easily had another 30 to 60 minutes on this. I just wanted to share very, very quickly a QR code there, and there'll also be a link in the chat, which my colleague Emily, thank you, has just shared. So we can't improve these sessions without hearing your feedback. It's a very, very short form, I promise. Please take a couple of minutes just to let us know how you found it today, and it'll help us improve for the future. That's all from me. I will be in touch again with the recording in a few days' time, but just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone again. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.